r/TrueOffMyChest Stepsister stole my college fund. Months later she's begging me. Stepsister stole my college fund. Months later she's begging me. The voicemail was 3 minutes of pathetic sobbing, but the text that followed it was what really got my attention. Please, I'll do anything. I'm about to lose everything and you're the only person who can help me. I stared at my phone, sitting in the parking lot of the community college where I'd been forced to enroll after discovering my $50,000 inheritance had vanished into thin air. 8 months ago, I was supposed to be starting my freshman year at State with a full ride thanks to Dad's college fund. Instead, I was here because my stepsister Madison had forged documents and convinced my stepmother Linda to help her drain every last penny for her bougie private university experience. The irony wasn't lost on me. Madison, who used to smirk whenever she saw me checking my community college class schedule, was now crying into my voicemail like her life was ending. Another text buzzed through. I know you hate me, but I'm desperate. Can we please talk? Hate was a strong word, but it wasn't wrong. When I confronted Linda and Madison about the missing money, Madison had shrugged and said, "You'll figure something out." You always do. Like stealing my dead father's gift to me was just some minor inconvenience I'd bounce back from. Linda had backed her up, claiming Dad would have wanted the money to go where it could do the most good, as if Madison's designer dorm room and spring break trips to Cabo were somehow more worthy than my computer science degree. I'd spent months wondering if I'd ever get past the rage. Some days it felt like acid in my chest, especially when I saw Madison's Instagram posts from her fancy campus, wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She tagged herself at expensive restaurants, concerts, weekend trips, all funded by money that was rightfully mine. But here's the thing they never expected: being forced to take a different path turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Community college was cheaper, the classes were smaller, and I actually had time to focus on building the web design business I'd started in high school. While Madison was partying away my inheritance, I was landing clients and banking money. Real money that nobody could touch. Now she was calling me, and based on the desperation in her voice, things had gone very wrong in Madison's perfect little world. I scrolled through her social media, something I'd avoided for months, and the story became clear. The expensive posts had stopped abruptly 6 weeks ago. Her relationship status had changed from in a relationship to nothing. Her last post was a vague quote about new beginnings, with comments from friends asking if she was okay. My phone rang. Madison's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me and I played it immediately. I know you're there. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying for hours. Look, I'm not at school anymore. Things happened and I can't pay for anything. My loans are due and I owe thousands on credit cards and I don't know what to do. She took a shaky breath. I know what we did was wrong. I know you'll probably never forgive me. But you're doing well now, right? Your business thing. Maybe we could work out some kind of arrangement. I could work for you, or, please, just call me back. I saved the voicemail and sat back in my car, engine still running. The girl who'd stolen my future was begging me to save hers. I didn't call her back that night, or the next day. But the messages kept coming. I got kicked out of the dorms. I'm staying at a motel and I can't afford another night. The collections people won't stop calling. They're saying they'll garnish my wages, but I don't even have a job. Mom won't help. She says she's tapped out from helping me before. That last one almost made me laugh. Linda had been so eager to justify stealing from me to fund Madison's dreams, but apparently her generosity had limits. I wondered if my stepmother was starting to realize what a mistake she'd made, or if she was just protecting her own assets now that the money train had derailed. By Thursday, the messages took on a different tone. I know you're ignoring me, but I have information you might want to hear. About what really happened with the fund. It wasn't just me. That got my attention. I'd always suspected there were details I didn't know, but Linda and Madison had closed ranks when I demanded answers. Now Madison was desperate enough to throw someone under the bus, probably Linda. I was still deciding whether to respond when my phone rang during my web design class. Unknown number, but I had a feeling I knew who it was. Hello. Thank God. Madison's relief was palpable. I wasn't sure you'd pick up. I almost didn't. You've got 2 minutes. Can we meet? Please. I can't talk about this over the phone. I looked around the computer lab where I'd been building a website for a local restaurant, a $3,000 project that would pay my expenses for the next month. My classmates were focused on their own screens, completely absorbed in code and design problems that actually had solutions. I'm busy, I said. I know you are. I've seen your website. You're doing really well. There was something strange in her voice, not quite jealousy, but maybe regret. Better than I ever did with your money. The admission hung between us. It was the first time she'd actually acknowledged that the money had been mine. What do you want, Madison? 1 hour. There's a diner on 5th Street, next to the Walmart. I'll explain everything, about the fund, about why I really got kicked out of school, about what Mom threatened if I didn't cooperate. Threatened? That was new. I don't owe you anything, I said, but even as I said it, I knew I was going to meet her. The need to know the whole truth was stronger than my anger. I know. But there are things you deserve to understand. About Dad's will, about what the lawyer said, about why Mom was so determined to move the money. My dad's will. I'd been told the college fund was separate from the will, a simple savings account he'd designated for my education. If there was more to it. 1 hour, I said finally. And if you're wasting my time or trying to manipulate me, I'm walking out. Thank you, she whispered. I'll be there at 6. I hung up and stared at my half-finished code, but I couldn't concentrate anymore. What had Linda threatened Madison with? And what did any of this have to do with Dad's will? As I packed up my laptop, I caught my reflection in the black screen. 8 months ago, I would have been naive enough to believe whatever sob story Madison spun. But losing everything had taught me to be careful, to question everything. Madison was desperate, and desperate people said whatever they thought you wanted to hear. But they also sometimes told the truth when they had nothing left to lose. The diner on 5th Street looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1980s, all cracked vinyl booths and flickering fluorescent lights. I spotted Madison immediately. She was hunched over a cup of coffee in the back corner, looking nothing like the confident girl who used to parade around our house in designer clothes. Her hair was greasy and pulled back in a messy ponytail. The expensive highlights had grown out, leaving harsh roots. She was wearing a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans that actually looked like they came from a regular store, not some boutique. When she looked up and saw me, her face was puffy from crying, dark circles under her eyes. "You came," she said, like she genuinely hadn't believed I would. I slid into the booth across from her, keeping my expression neutral. "Start talking." Madison wrapped her hands around her coffee mug like she was trying to warm herself. "The money, it wasn't just about me wanting to go to a better school. Mom told me the fund was going to be contested." "Contested by who?" "Your dad's brother. Uncle Mark." She looked up at me. "He filed something with the court saying the college fund should have been part of the estate, that it was too much money to be just sitting in an education account. He wanted it split between all the potential heirs." I stared at her. Uncle Mark and Dad had barely spoken in years. "That's impossible. Dad set up that account specifically for me." "I know, but apparently there was some technical issue with how it was structured. The lawyers said it could take years to sort out, and in the meantime, the account would be frozen." Madison's voice got smaller. "Mom said if we didn't move the money quickly, you might not get any of it at all." My stomach dropped. "So you decided to steal it instead?" "We didn't see it as stealing. We thought. Mom thought if we used it for education like your dad intended, just shifted it to immediate expenses instead of letting it sit there while lawyers fought over it." She trailed off, probably realizing how insane that sounded. "Why didn't anyone tell me about Uncle Mark?" "Mom said you try to fight it in court and end up spending everything on legal fees. She said this way, at least the money would go to education, and I could help support you later when I got my degree and found a good job." I almost laughed. "Help support me? Madison, you spent $50,000 in less than 2 semesters. On what?" Her face crumpled. "I know I messed up. The private school was so expensive, and everyone there had money, and I just wanted to fit in. Derek, my boyfriend, he was used to a certain lifestyle, and I thought if I could just make it through school, get my degree, everything would work out." "What happened with Derek?" "He found out I was lying about my family having money. His parents did some kind of background check when things got serious between us, and they discovered Mom's just a middle manager and you and I are nobodies from nowhere." The bitterness in her voice was sharp. Suddenly he was too busy to return my calls. "And school. I was failing everything. I spent so much time trying to keep up socially that I stopped going to classes. They put me on academic probation, then kicked me out entirely." She wiped her nose with a crumpled napkin. "I owe them $15,000 for the last semester, plus I maxed out 3 credit cards trying to maintain appearances after Derek started pulling away." I sat back, processing everything. If what she was saying about Uncle Mark was true, then maybe Linda and Madison hadn't just been greedy. Maybe they'd actually thought they were protecting the money. But that didn't excuse the lies, or the fact that they'd made the decision without me. "I need to see the court documents," I said finally. "Everything about Uncle Mark's claim." Madison nodded eagerly. "I have copies back at the motel. Mom kept everything. And I want to talk to the lawyer who told you about this. That might be harder. Mom found him, and she paid him cash for the consultation. I don't think she wanted an official paper trail." Of course she didn't. I studied Madison's face, trying to determine how much of this was truth and how much was desperate manipulation. But the details felt too specific, too embarrassing for her to make up. "There's something else," Madison said quietly. "The reason I really need your help. It's not just about the debt." "What else?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Madison's hands were shaking now. "Mom kicked me out. When I got expelled and couldn't pay her back the money she'd loaned me for expenses, she said I was on my own." Her laugh was bitter and hollow. "Turns out her generosity had conditions I didn't know about. She kicked you out for getting expelled." "She kicked me out because Derek's family started asking questions. They hired some kind of investigator when they were considering letting me into their precious family circle." Madison's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "The investigator didn't just look into our finances. He looked into the college fund transfer." My blood went cold. "What did he find?" "Enough to make Derek's father threaten to call the police if I didn't stay away from their son. And enough to make Mom panic that the whole thing could blow back on her." Madison met my eyes for the first time since I'd sat down. "She told me I had 48 hours to figure out how to fix this, or she'd throw me under the bus completely. Tell everyone it was my idea, that I forged documents without her knowledge." "Did you?" "Forge documents?" "Some of them. But Mom knew about every single one. She helped me practice your signature." The admission came out in a rush. "She said it wasn't really fraud since the money was always meant for education anyway, just a different timeline than your dad had planned." I felt sick. Linda had always been manipulative, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. So now she's pretending she had nothing to do with it. She's doing more than pretending. She's actively covering her tracks. Last week she told our neighbors that I'd been stealing money from the family and she'd finally discovered it and kicked me out. She's building a story where she's the victim. "Where are you staying?" "The roadside inn on Highway 9. $40 a night, and I've got maybe enough for 3 more nights." She gestured to her appearance. "Then I honestly don't know." I wanted to feel satisfied that Madison was finally facing consequences, but looking at her across the sticky diner table, I mostly felt tired. "Why are you telling me this? What do you want me to do about it?" "I need help, but not money." "Not exactly." Madison leaned forward. "I need you to back up my story about Mom's involvement. If this goes to court, and Derek's family is still deciding whether to press charges, I need someone who can testify that Linda had access to your accounts, that she knew about the transfers. You want me to help you throw Linda under the bus. I want you to tell the truth about what happened. She's going to let me take the fall for everything while she keeps her job, her house, her reputation." Madison's voice got stronger, angrier. She used both of us. She stole your money and destroyed my life, and now she's planning to walk away clean. I stared out the diner window at the parking lot, watching a woman load groceries into an old Honda while her toddler threw a tantrum in a shopping cart. Normal people with normal problems. There's something you need to know, I said slowly. I've been keeping records. Bank statements, emails, phone logs. I never stopped investigating what happened to my money. Madison's eyes widened. What kind of records? The kind that would be very interesting to Derek's family's investigator. And probably to the police. I leaned back in the booth. The question is, why should I use them to help you instead of just letting you both go down? For the first time all evening, Madison looked truly scared. Madison stared at me across the table, her face cycling through expressions like she was trying on different masks. Fear, hope, calculation, desperation. You've been investigating this whole time, she whispered. Did you think I'd just give up? That was my father's money, Madison. My entire future. I kept my voice level, but inside I felt that familiar surge of anger. I might have started at community college, but I never stopped fighting. What kind of evidence do you have? I pulled out my phone and opened a folder I'd labeled documentation. Bank transfer records that show the exact times money moved out of my account. Screenshots of Linda's Facebook posts from when you were at private school. She was awfully proud of your expensive lifestyle for someone who supposedly didn't know where the money came from. Madison's face went pale. Email chains between Linda and the bank that I got through a formal request. Phone records showing dozens of calls between her and the private school's financial aid office. I scrolled through the files. Oh, and my personal favorite, security footage from the bank showing Linda making withdrawals from my account. Apparently they keep that footage longer than most people think. How did you get all of this? Turns out when someone steals $50,000 from you, banks and courts are pretty cooperative about providing evidence. Especially when the victim is a recently orphaned teenager. I set my phone on the table. I've been building a case for months. I was planning to file charges after I finished my first year at community college. Madison's hands were trembling again. Were. Past tense. That was before I knew about Uncle Mark's claim. If there really is a legal dispute over the fund, it complicates things. I studied her face. But here's what I don't understand. If the money was legally frozen because of your uncle's challenge, how were Linda and her lawyer able to move it at all? The question hung in the air like smoke. Madison's eyes darted away from mine. Madison. It's complicated. Uncomplicated. She took a shaky breath. The lawyer Mom found, he said there was a window. Like, a brief period after Uncle Mark filed his claim but before the court actually froze the account. He said if we moved fast, we could get the money out for educational purposes and the court would probably approve it retroactively. That sounds like complete bullshit. I know that now. Her voice cracked. But I was 19 and scared and Mom made it sound like it was the only way to save your college fund from being eaten up by legal fees. I felt puzzle pieces clicking together in my mind. What was the lawyer's name? Something with A.K., Kowalski. Kovac. And Linda paid him cash for this advice. Yeah, she said it would be simpler that way, avoid unnecessary paperwork while the situation was so volatile. I almost laughed. Madison, I think you and I have both been played. What do you mean? I mean I don't think there ever was a lawyer. I think Linda made the whole thing up. I pulled up another file on my phone. Because I hired my own lawyer 2 months ago, and the first thing she did was check for any other claims on Dad's estate. There's nothing. No Uncle Mark filing, no disputed inheritance, no legal complications at all. The color drained completely from Madison's face. That's impossible. I saw documents. You saw papers that Linda showed you. Did you ever speak to this lawyer directly? Did you ever see his office, his business license, anything that proved he existed? Madison's mouth opened and closed silently. Then she buried her face in her hands. She played us both, I said quietly. The question now is what we're going to do about it. Madison's shoulders shook as the full scope of Linda's manipulation sank in. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red-rimmed but blazing with fury. She made me practice your signature for hours, Madison said, her voice barely controlled. Said it had to be perfect because the lawyer was very particular about documentation. God, I actually thanked her for being so thorough. I watched her process the betrayal, remembering my own moment of realization months ago when the pieces first started falling into place. There's more you need to know. More. Madison laughed bitterly. What else could there possibly be? I hesitated, then decided she deserved the full truth. Linda's been transferring money out of your account too. Small amounts, but consistent. I saw it when I was tracking the financial connections. Madison went very still. What are you talking about? I don't have any money left. Your student account at the private school. After you were expelled, there was a partial refund for unused meal plans and housing. About $3,000. I pulled up another screenshot. Linda had herself listed as an authorized contact on your account. The money went straight to her. That bitch. The word came out like a hiss. That money was supposed to help me figure out what to do next. She told me the school was keeping everything because of my academic suspension. She's been systematically cleaning out every available resource while positioning herself as the victim. I leaned forward. Madison, she's not just throwing you under the bus. She's been planning this from the beginning. Madison stared at the evidence on my phone screen, her face cycling through emotions. All those times she said she was protecting me from the legal complications. Making sure I didn't accidentally say something that would hurt our case. She was making sure you couldn't expose her lies because you didn't know they were lies. And Derek's family investigation. Probably the first real scrutiny she's faced. She's panicking because someone with actual resources is looking into her story. I closed the files on my phone. The question is whether Derek's father will actually follow through with pressing charges or if he's just trying to scare you away from his son. Madison was quiet for a long moment, staring out the diner window. He'll follow through. Derek told me his dad doesn't make empty threats. He said. She stopped abruptly. What? Derek said his father hired the investigator because he suspected I was running some kind of long-term con. That I'd targeted Derek specifically because of his family's money. Her voice got smaller. He wasn't entirely wrong. Linda did encourage me to pursue Derek when she found out who his father was. Another piece clicked into place. She was planning an exit strategy even then. If the college fund theft ever came to light, she'd need you to have access to other resources. Or she'd need a reason to completely cut ties with me. Madison's eyes widened with realization. If I'm caught running a con on a wealthy family, she looks like another victim instead of an accomplice. I felt a chill run down my spine. Madison, what exactly did Derek tell his father about your relationship? About how you met? Everything. How Linda introduced us at that charity event last year. How she'd mentioned that I needed mentorship from successful families because I didn't have good role models at home. Madison's voice was hollow. She set up the entire thing. The diner suddenly felt too small, too warm. Linda hadn't just stolen money and forged documents. She'd orchestrated an elaborate long-term scheme that positioned Madison as the perfect fall guy for multiple crimes. We need to call my lawyer, I said. Tonight. Madison's phone buzzed on the table between us. She glanced at it and her face went white. What is it? Text from Linda. Her voice was barely a whisper. She wants to meet tomorrow morning. Says it's urgent. I leaned over to read the screen. Madison honey, Derek's father called me directly. We need to coordinate our story before this gets out of hand. Coffee at 9 a.m. This could affect both our futures. She doesn't know we've been talking, I realized. She thinks I'm still her useful idiot. Madison's hands clenched into fists. God, I want to tear her apart. No. This is actually perfect. My mind was already racing. She's going to try to coach you on what to say to investigators. We'll finally have proof of active obstruction. What do you mean? I pulled out a small recording device from my backpack. My lawyer gave me this after our first meeting. Said if Linda ever tried to contact me directly, I should document everything. Madison stared at the device. You want me to wear a wire? I want you to get her to confess. Get her to admit she forged the documents, that there never was a lawyer, that she planned the whole Derek situation. Alex, if she figures out what I'm doing. What's she going to do? She's already destroyed your credit, stolen your money, and set you up to take the fall for fraud charges. The worst she can do is cut you off completely, and honestly, that might be a blessing. Madison was quiet for a moment, then her expression hardened. You're right. I have nothing left to lose. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Is this Alex? The voice was crisp, professional. Male. This is Richard Westbrook, Derek's father. I believe you know my son's former girlfriend. My blood turned to ice. How did you get this number? I've been investigating your stepsister's background, which naturally led me to the interesting case of her family's financial situation. You'd be surprised how much information becomes available when you have the right resources. I looked at Madison, who had gone pale hearing the name Westbrook. What do you want? A conversation. I suspect we might have mutual interests regarding Linda Morrison and her creative approach to finances. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can you meet me tonight? There's a coffee shop on 5th Street, Grind Coffee. I'll be there at 9 p.m. I checked the time. It was already 7:30. How do I know this isn't some kind of trap? Because, Alex, I believe your stepmother has been running a much larger operation than either of us initially realized. And I think she's about to disappear. The line went dead. Madison grabbed my arm. What did he mean, disappear? I was already pulling up Linda's social media on my phone. Her last Facebook post was from 3 days ago. Her Instagram was the same. But her LinkedIn profile, the one where she always posted constantly about her real estate success, showed last activity 2 weeks ago. When's the last time you actually saw Linda in person? Madison thought for a moment. Last week. She came by too, oh God. She came by to get me to sign some papers. Said they were related to clearing up the legal mess with Uncle Mark's claim. What kind of papers? I didn't read them carefully. She said they were just formalities, something about transferring liability for the disputed funds. Madison's voice got smaller. Alex, what if those papers made me legally responsible for the entire theft? I was already texting my lawyer, but I had a sinking feeling we might already be too late. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived at 8:55 p.m., just a few college students hunched over laptops and a barista who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I spotted Richard Westbrook immediately. Even sitting down, he radiated the kind of authority that money and power create. Expensive suit, silver hair, and eyes that missed nothing. He stood when I approached, extending a hand. Alex. Thank you for coming. I sat across from him, every instinct telling me to be careful. You said Linda might disappear. What did you mean? Direct. I like that. He pulled out a tablet and turned it toward me. I had my investigator run a comprehensive background check on your stepmother. What we found was illuminating. The screen showed a series of documents, bank statements, property records, business filings. Linda Morrison has been very busy over the past 2 weeks. She's liquidated her real estate holdings, closed 3 bank accounts, and transferred the proceeds to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. My stomach dropped. How much money are we talking about? Conservative estimate. Around $200,000. Your college fund was apparently just one piece of a much larger puzzle. I stared at the numbers, trying to process what this meant. She's been planning to run. It gets worse. The papers your stepsister signed last week. They weren't just about transferring liability. They were power of attorney documents. Linda now has legal authority to make financial decisions on Madison's behalf. The room felt like it was spinning. But Madison's 20. She's an adult. Yes, but she's also been classified as financially incompetent due to her debt situation and academic failures. Linda petitioned the court 3 weeks ago, citing Madison's inability to manage her finances responsibly. She had documentation, credit card debt, academic suspension, evidence of poor decision-making. She orchestrated all of that. Exactly. But the court doesn't know that. As far as they're concerned, Linda is a concerned stepmother protecting her vulnerable stepdaughter. He swiped to another document. She's also filed for emergency guardianship of Madison's affairs, claiming Madison is suffering from depression and making self-destructive choices. I felt sick. What does this mean for Madison? It means Linda can legally access any funds Madison might receive, including lawsuit settlements, insurance payouts, or loan disbursements. More importantly, it means Madison can't take legal action against Linda without court approval, and Linda has to approve any lawyers Madison wants to hire. That's insane. How is this legal? It's a loophole in the system designed to protect vulnerable adults. Unfortunately, it's being weaponized by someone who understands exactly how to manipulate legal procedures. My phone buzzed. Text from Madison, *, something's wrong. Linda moved our meeting to 6 a.m. tomorrow. Says we need to go to her lawyer's office first thing. I'm scared. *. I showed Westbrook the message. His expression darkened. She's accelerating her timeline. The lawyer's office is probably where she'll have Madison sign additional documents, likely something that absolves Linda of any wrongdoing in exchange for Madison keeping power of attorney protections. We have to stop this. Alex, there's something else you need to know. My investigator discovered that Linda has done this before. In California, 15 years ago. Different name, but the same pattern, married a widower, gained access to family finances, systematically drained accounts, then disappeared when the children became legal adults. The coffee shop suddenly felt ice cold. What happened to that family? The widower died under suspicious circumstances. Heart attack, ruled natural causes. The children were left with massive debt and no way to prove what had happened to their inheritance. He leaned forward. Linda Morrison isn't just a thief, Alex. She's a predator who targets grieving families. My hands were shaking as I texted Madison back, *, don't go tomorrow. Don't sign anything. Meet me tonight instead. Emergency. *. What can we do? I asked. Westbrook's smile was sharp as a blade. We're going to set a trap. The plan Westbrook outlined was risky, but it was the only shot we had. Linda thinks she's controlling the narrative, he explained, pulling up a map on his tablet. But she doesn't know that Madison is willing to cooperate with us, and she definitely doesn't know about my resources. I was still processing everything when my phone rang. Madison's name flashed on the screen. Alex, thank God. Her voice was shaky. I can't meet tonight. Linda showed up at my apartment an hour ago with some guy I've never seen before. They're not letting me leave. My blood ran cold. What do you mean they're not letting you leave? They said it's for my own protection. That you've been manipulating me and they need to keep me safe until we can get everything sorted out legally tomorrow. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Alex, I think the guy might be a private security guard or something. He's just sitting by my door. Westbrook was already typing on his phone. He showed me the screen, calling police now. Madison, listen to me carefully. Are you hurt? Are you in immediate danger? No, but... Alex, they brought more papers. Linda says if I don't sign them tomorrow, I could go to prison for the fraud charges. She says the only way to protect myself is to accept the guardianship arrangement and let her handle everything. She's lying. Don't sign anything. But what if she's not? What if I really could go to prison? Madison's voice cracked. I can't handle this anymore. Maybe it would be easier to just let her take care of everything. That's exactly what Linda was counting on, Madison's exhaustion and fear making her compliant. Madison, where exactly are you right now? Are you at your apartment? Yeah, but, the line went dead. I looked at Westbrook, panic rising in my chest. They hung up on her. My contact at the police department is sending someone to do a welfare check, he said. But this complicates things significantly. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, *, this is Linda. We need to talk. Madison is fine, but she's very confused right now. Meet me tomorrow at 8 a.m. at Morrison Legal Services, 1247, Oak Street. Come alone, and we can resolve this misunderstanding, *. Morrison Legal Services. I showed Westbrook the message. She named her fake law firm after herself. She's getting sloppy. Desperation makes people careless. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Actually, this might work in our favor. How? She has Madison under guard somewhere. Because she's moved from theft to potential kidnapping. The police will have to take this seriously now. He stood up, gathering his things. Alex, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. How badly do you want justice for what she did to your family? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, are you willing to put yourself at risk to stop her? Because what I'm about to propose could be dangerous. I thought about my father, about the college fund he'd worked so hard to build for me. I thought about Madison, scared and trapped in her apartment. I thought about the family in California who'd lost everything to this woman. What did you have in mind? We're going to that meeting tomorrow. But instead of going in blind, we're going to turn it into a sting operation. His eyes were cold steel. Linda Morrison has been playing a long game, but she made one critical mistake. What's that? She targeted the wrong family this time. My son might be an idiot, but nobody threatens people I care about and walks away clean. The way he said it made me believe him completely. But it also made me wonder what I was getting myself into. The police welfare check turned up nothing. When officers arrived at Madison's apartment, everything appeared normal, no signs of forced entry, no disturbance, and according to the landlord, Madison had left voluntarily with her family members around 7 p.m. They're good at this, Westbrook said as we sat in his car outside the community college parking lot at 11 p.m. Professional level good. My phone had been silent since Linda's text. No response from Madison, no matter how many times I tried calling. What if something happened to her? She's more valuable to Linda alive and cooperative than hurt. His voice was matter of fact, but I caught the tension underneath. Linda needs Madison functional enough to sign documents. But Alex, we need to face the possibility that Madison might not be willing to cooperate with us anymore. What do you mean? Fear makes people do desperate things. If Linda has convinced Madison that signing those papers is her only way out of legal trouble. He trailed off, but I understood. You think Madison might choose Linda's side? I think Madison is 20 years old, drowning in debt, facing potential fraud charges, and terrified. People in that position don't always make rational choices. The doubt in his voice made my stomach clench. Everything hinged on Madison being willing to help us expose Linda. If she cracked under pressure. My phone finally buzzed. Text from Madison, * I'm okay. Had to give Linda my phone earlier but got it back. Meeting moved to 7 a.m. instead of 8. She says you agreed to come alone, *. I showed Westbrook the message. That's not how Linda worded it. Madison's trying to tell us something without being direct. He studied the text. 7 a.m. instead of 8, that gives Linda an extra hour we weren't planning for. And asking if you agreed suggests Madison knows you didn't. I typed back, * I'll be there. Are you safe where you are, *. The response came quickly, * staying at Linda's house tonight. She's being really nice, making dinner, talking about how we can fix everything. It's weird, *. Love bombing, Westbrook said immediately. Classic manipulation technique. After isolating the target and creating fear, you become their savior. Makes them emotionally dependent on you. Is the security guy still around? I texted. * What security guy? It was just Linda's lawyer friend. He left after we talked, *. I felt a chill. She doesn't remember the guard. Or Linda convinced her she misunderstood what happened. Memory becomes unreliable under stress. Westbrook's phone rang. He answered curtly, what did you find? I could only hear his side of the conversation, but his expression grew increasingly grim. Are you certain? When? No, proceed as planned, but add security detail. Yes, immediately. He hung up and turned to me. Morrison Legal Services is a real law firm. Linda didn't make it up. That's good, right? Means it's legitimate. No, Alex. It means she owns an actual law firm. My investigator just discovered Linda Morrison passed the California bar exam under a different name 12 years ago. She's not just pretending to be a lawyer, she is one. The implications hit me like a freight train. She knows exactly what she's doing legally. Every document, every procedure, every loophole, it's all been calculated by someone who understands the system inside and out. He started the car. This isn't some desperate amateur hour scam. Linda has been planning this for years, possibly since the day she married your father. My phone buzzed again. Madison, * Linda showed me some papers about the guardianship thing. She says it's temporary, just until the fraud investigation is over. It actually doesn't sound that bad. Maybe I was panicking earlier, *. She's losing her, Westbrook said quietly, reading over my shoulder. Linda's reeling her back in. Madison, please don't sign anything tomorrow until I get there, I texted back. * Of course. Linda says you two just need to talk and clear the air. She's not mad at you anymore, *. How is that possible? I asked. How can Linda not be mad after everything that's happened? Westbrook's smile was cold. Because she thinks she's already won. The next morning at 6:30 a.m., I sat in Westbrook's car 3 blocks from Morrison Legal Services, wearing a wire that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The FBI agent who'd attached it, Agent Chen, had been very clear about the risks. If she's really a licensed attorney, she'll know how to stay just inside legal boundaries, Chen had explained. We need her to explicitly admit to the forgery and theft. Implications won't be enough for prosecution. My phone had been modified to record and transmit everything. In my pocket was a thick folder of documents Westbrook had prepared, fake financial statements showing I had access to significant funds. The bait. Remember, Westbrook said through my earpiece, Linda thinks she's smarter than everyone in the room. Use that. Let her talk. Arrogant people love explaining how clever they are. I walked toward the building, my hands shaking slightly. Morrison Legal Services occupied the entire second floor of a renovated downtown office building. Real. Professional. Legitimate looking. Exactly what Linda needed to seem credible. The receptionist smiled warmly. You must be Alex. Ms. Morrison is waiting in conference room B. Can I get you some coffee? No, thank you. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Conference room B was all dark wood and leather chairs. Linda sat at the head of a polished table, wearing a navy business suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked nothing like the desperate woman who'd shown up at my apartment weeks ago. Alex. Thank you so much for coming. She stood, extending her hand like we were old friends. Please, sit. We have so much to discuss. Where's Madison? She's fine. Sleeping in this morning, poor thing was exhausted. Linda's smile never wavered. She'll join us later, after we've had a chance to clear the air. I sat across from her, placing my folder on the table but keeping it closed. You said this was about resolving a misunderstanding. Exactly. Linda opened her own folder, revealing neat stacks of legal documents. Alex, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I was so overwhelmed after your father's death, and honestly, I made some mistakes in how I handled Madison's education expenses. Mistakes. I kept my voice flat. Poor judgment, really. I should have consulted with you before making those withdrawals. But you have to understand, Madison was already enrolled, and there were deadlines. She trailed off, studying my expression. But that's in the past now. What matters is moving forward in a way that benefits everyone. What are you proposing? Linda leaned forward, her eyes bright with confidence. I've been watching your social media, Alex. That business of yours is doing quite well. The photography work, the local contracts, very impressive for someone your age. A chill ran down my spine. She'd been monitoring me. I'd like to offer you a partnership opportunity, she continued. Madison needs help with her legal situation, and you clearly have access to resources now. If you were to make a substantial investment in her defense fund, say, $75,000, I could guarantee all charges would be dropped. $75,000. I tried to sound interested rather than horrified. It sounds like a lot, but consider what you're gaining. Madison's gratitude, the satisfaction of helping family, and most importantly. She slid a document across the table. Legal protection for your own business activities. I looked at the paper without touching it. What do you mean? Well, Alex, I'd hate for anyone to look too closely at your recent financial success. Business licenses, tax reporting for a minor, compliance with local regulations. Her smile turned predatory. These things can be so complicated. One small oversight can cause enormous problems. My blood ran cold. She was threatening me now. Of course, Linda continued smoothly, with proper legal representation, these concerns disappear entirely. I'd be happy to handle all your business affairs going forward. The trap was perfect. She wasn't just stealing money, she was building a protection racket. That's very generous of you, I said carefully, forcing myself to sound intrigued rather than terrified. But $75,000 is a significant amount. I'd need some assurances. Linda's eyes lit up. She thought she had me hooked. Of course. That's exactly why I prepared this comprehensive agreement. She pulled out another document, this one even thicker. Everything spelled out clearly. Your investment, Madison's legal resolution, and my ongoing services for your business. I pretended to study the contract while my mind raced. Through my earpiece, I could barely hear Westbrook's voice, keep her talking about the original theft. We need specifics. Before I commit to anything this substantial, I said, I need to understand exactly what happened with my father's fund. For my own peace of mind. Linda's expression flickered for just a moment before the smile returned. Of course. Transparency is important in any business relationship. The documents Madison signed, were they legitimate? Completely legitimate. Madison was listed as a beneficiary, and she had every legal right to access those funds for educational purposes. But the signatures were properly notarized and filed according to state requirements. Linda's voice took on a lecturing tone. Alex, I think you've been given some incorrect information about how these trusts work. Your father's will was quite specific about educational expenses taking priority. She was good. Staying just within the bounds of legal language while completely rewriting history. I've never seen the original will, I said. Well, naturally. You were a minor when it was filed. But I have copies right here. She produced yet another folder. Your father was very concerned about both you and Madison having access to higher education. I opened the folder and immediately saw the problem. The will looked legitimate, but there were subtle differences from the version I remembered my father showing me years ago. The language about educational expenses had been enhanced. This seems different from what I remember. Memory can be tricky, especially during grief. But legal documents don't lie. Linda leaned back confidently. The important thing is that your father wanted both his children to succeed. Madison accessed her portion first, but there's still plenty available for your needs too. My portion? Well, not directly accessible until you're 21, of course. Unless. She gestured at the contract. You were to become an emancipated minor through business ownership. Which my partnership agreement would facilitate. The trap was even more elaborate than I'd realized. She wasn't just stealing from me, she was positioning herself to control any money I might access in the future. My phone buzzed. A text from Madison, *Alex, where are you? Linda said you'd be here by now. I'm getting worried, *. I showed Linda the message. She's awake. Ah, perfect timing. Linda glanced at her own phone. Actually, there's been a slight change in schedule. Madison is meeting with a counselor this morning, part of her legal compliance requirements. But don't worry, she'll join us once we've finalized the basic framework. What counselor? Dr. Sarah Chen. Specializes in helping young adults navigate legal difficulties. Very discreet, very effective. My blood froze. Agent Chen had mentioned she sometimes worked undercover using different professional covers. Was this part of the FBI operation, or had Linda somehow discovered the investigation and was using a fake counselor to manipulate Madison further? I'd like to speak with Madison directly before we proceed, I said. Linda's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. I'm afraid that's not possible right now. Doctor-patient confidentiality, you understand. But she specifically asked me to tell you she's grateful you're helping her. Then maybe we should reschedule when she's available. Oh, but Alex, Linda's voice took on a subtle edge, the legal deadlines won't wait for our convenience. Madison's hearing has been moved up to tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow afternoon. I tried to keep my voice steady. That's very sudden. These things happen in the legal system, Linda said smoothly. Which is why we need to move quickly on the funding. The retainer for Madison's defense team is due by close of business today. Something felt wrong beyond the obvious manipulation. The FBI had said Madison's case was still weeks away from any hearing. Either Linda was lying about the timeline or something had changed that Agent Chen hadn't told me about. I'll need to verify some things with my own financial advisor before committing, I said, pulling out my phone. May I step outside for a moment? Linda's expression hardened slightly. Alex, I hope you're not having second thoughts. Madison is counting on you. Family loyalty means everything in situations like this. Of course not. I just need to confirm the transfer procedures for this amount. I stood and walked toward the door, but Linda's voice stopped me. Actually, why don't you make your calls right here? I'd be happy to speak with your advisor directly if they have any questions about the legal framework. My heart pounded. She didn't want me leaving the room. Through my earpiece, I heard Westbrook's voice. Something's wrong. We're seeing movement at the building. 2 additional vehicles just arrived. I pretended to fiddle with my phone while scanning the room. The conference room had only one exit, and Linda had positioned herself between me and the door. The windows faced an alley, not the main street where backup was positioned. You know what, I said, sitting back down, maybe I should understand more about these legal complications you mentioned regarding my business. Linda's smile returned, predatory and satisfied. I'm so glad you asked. It shows you're thinking strategically. She pulled out another folder, this one much thicker. I've done some preliminary research into your recent activities. My blood ran cold as she spread photographs across the table. Pictures of me meeting with Agent Chen at the coffee shop. Photos of me entering the FBI field office. Even a shot of me talking with Detective Westbrook outside the police station. Very interesting social circle you've developed, Alex. Linda's voice was silky smooth. Though I have to wonder what a young entrepreneur would need with federal law enforcement. The trap had been reversed. Somehow, she'd figured out the investigation. I don't know what you're implying, I managed. Oh, I think you do. Linda leaned forward. The question is whether you're naive enough to think you could outsmart me, or if you're actually working with them voluntarily. Through my earpiece, static crackled. Then Westbrook's voice, urgent, Alex, get out now. We've lost contact with Agent Chen. The building's being watched by unknowns. Here's what's going to happen, Linda continued conversationally. You're going to call your law enforcement friends and explain that this was all a misunderstanding. That you've reconciled with your family and no longer need their assistance. And if I don't? Linda pulled out her phone and showed me the screen. A video call connected to what looked like a small, dingy room. Madison sat in a chair, looking confused and frightened. Behind her stood a man I didn't recognize. Madison's counseling session is going very well, Linda said. Though Dr. Chen had to step out unexpectedly. Professional emergency, you understand. Where is she? Safe. For now. As long as you make the right choices. Linda's mask had completely dropped. The concerned stepmother act was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. You see, Alex, I've spent the last 2 years building a very profitable operation. Madison's college expenses were just the beginning. What operation? Legal services for families in crisis. Wealth management for grieving relatives. It's amazing how much money flows through the system when people are too emotional to ask the right questions. She gestured at the luxurious office around us. Your father's fund was seed money. But there have been so many other families, other tragedies. I felt sick. She'd been systematically targeting bereaved families, using fake legal services to steal inheritance money. Madison doesn't know, does she? Madison knows exactly what she needs to know. She's always been easy to manage when she has the right motivation. Linda glanced meaningfully at her phone screen, where Madison still sat looking lost and afraid. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, asterisk play along. Help is coming. See asterisk. Agent Chen was alive and somehow still in communication. I had to buy time. What exactly do you want me to do? Linda's smile widened as she sensed my apparent surrender. Smart boy. I knew you'd see reason. She slid a new phone across the table. You're going to call Detective Westbrook first. Tell him you've decided to drop the investigation because you've worked things out with your family. I picked up the phone, my hands deliberately shaking to sell the performance. What about Agent Chen? Oh, she's indisposed at the moment. But don't worry, once we've cleared up this misunderstanding, I'm sure she'll be released from her consultation. Linda's eyes glittered dangerously. Make the call, Alex. Madison's comfort depends on your cooperation. Through my earpiece, I heard muffled sounds, footsteps, voices, what might have been doors opening and closing. The FBI was moving, but I had no idea if they knew where Madison was being held. I dialed Westbrook's number, praying he'd understand whatever coded message I could manage. He picked up on the first ring. Alex? Thank God. Where are you? Detective Westbrook, I said, making my voice sound defeated. I'm calling to let you know I won't be needing police assistance anymore. My family and I have worked everything out. A pause. I see. That's sudden. Are you sure about this decision? Yes, I'm sure. My stepmother Linda has been very helpful in explaining the legal situation. I emphasized her name, hoping he'd catch it. She's shown me documentation about my father's will that I hadn't seen before. Documentation. Right. Westbrook's voice was carefully neutral. And you're comfortable with this new arrangement? Well, there are still some complications to work through. But Linda assures me everything will be resolved soon. I glanced at Madison on the phone screen, trying to convey my desperation without alerting Linda. She's been very thorough in addressing all the family concerns. I understand. Alex, before you go, do you remember that conversation we had about safety protocols? My heart jumped. During one of our meetings, Westbrook had mentioned that if I ever felt unsafe, I should work the word absolutely into any phone conversation. Absolutely, I said quickly. I'm absolutely certain this is the right decision. Linda was nodding approvingly, but I saw her tense slightly at my word choice. Well then, Westbrook continued, I hope everything works out for your family. Take care of yourself. I will. Thank you for everything. Linda gestured for me to hang up, satisfaction clear on her face. Excellent. Now, let's call your federal friends. About that, I said, setting the phone down. I think there might be a problem with your plan. Her expression sharpened. What kind of problem? Well, when you showed me those photos of me with law enforcement, I noticed something interesting. I pulled out my own phone, moving slowly to avoid spooking her. The timestamps. What about them? They were all taken after Madison's arrest. Which means you were already watching me before I ever contacted the police. I met her eyes steadily. So either you're psychic, or you knew Madison was going to get caught. Linda's composure cracked slightly. You're overthinking this, Alex. Am I? Because I'm starting to wonder if Madison's arrest wasn't as random as everyone assumed. Academic probation doesn't usually lead to criminal charges unless someone files specific complaints. You're being paranoid. Maybe. But here's what's really interesting, Madison's boyfriend dumping her. Rich kid like Brandon doesn't usually care about academic problems. But financial fraud? That would definitely make his family nervous. Linda stood abruptly, her calm facade crumbling. Enough games. Make the call to Agent Chen's supervisor, or... The lights in the conference room suddenly cut out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Through the walls, I heard the distinctive sound of heavy footsteps moving rapidly through the building. Linda grabbed her phone, but the screen showed the video call had disconnected. What did you do? She hissed. Me. Nothing. I stood slowly, backing toward the window. But I think my absolutely certain phone call might have been more effective than you realized. The conference room door exploded inward. Federal agents in tactical gear poured through the doorway, weapons drawn and voices shouting commands. FBI. Hands where we can see them. Linda spun toward the window, but more agents were already rappelling down the building's exterior, blocking that escape route entirely. The careful trap she'd set had become her own cage. Linda Morrison, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and kidnapping, Agent Chen announced as she entered behind the tactical team, very much alive and clearly in charge. Her earlier consultation had apparently been an elaborate setup. Linda's hands shook as she raised them above her head. This is a misunderstanding. I'm an attorney. You're a predator, Chen cut her off coldly. We've been tracking your fraudulent legal practice for 6 months. Alex's case gave us the evidence we needed to connect you to at least 12 other families you've victimized. As they cuffed Linda, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and vindication. Is Madison safe? She's fine, Westbrook said, appearing in the doorway. Confused and scared, but unharmed. The man with her was actually an undercover agent. We've been monitoring her since yesterday. The scope of Linda's operation became clear over the following hours. She hadn't just stolen from grieving families, she'd created an entire network of fake legal services, targeting people when they were most vulnerable. The luxurious office, the confident demeanor, even her supposed law degree, all part of an elaborate con. Madison was waiting at the police station when we arrived, wrapped in a blanket and looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. When she saw me, tears started streaming down her face. Alex, I swear I didn't know, she whispered. About any of it. I thought the money was from Mom's legal work, and when I started asking questions about the other families. She shuddered. That's when she started having me followed. She said it was for my protection, but I was starting to realize. I know, I said simply. I know you didn't know. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Linda's fake law firm crumbled under investigation, revealing millions in stolen funds from dozens of families. The evidence was overwhelming, forged documents, falsified credentials, bank records showing systematic theft over nearly 3 years. Within a week, Madison was released from jail, all charges dropped. She'd been as much a victim as anyone else, manipulated by someone she trusted completely. What happens now? She asked as we sat in my apartment, surrounded by boxes of legal documents the FBI had returned to their rightful owners. Now you rebuild, I said. The recovered funds from Linda's accounts will help with your debt. And there's something else. I handed her an envelope. My father's college fund is being restored from the seized assets. There's enough for both of us. Her eyes widened. Alex, I can't. You can, I interrupted. We're family, right? The real kind, not the kind that steals from each other. I smiled. Besides, I've got my business now. And I heard community college has an excellent transfer program to state schools. 6 months later, Madison started her sophomore year at a state university, majoring in social work with a focus on financial advocacy for vulnerable families. She said she wanted to help people avoid what we've been through. As for me, I expanded my business and eventually transferred to complete my degree in criminal justice. Agent Chen said I had a natural talent for investigation. Linda got 15 years. Sometimes justice actually works.